So it's great to see everybody. We're going to call to order the meeting of the Board of Supervisors for June 4th, 2024. Roll call, please.
Vice Chair Cottrell. Here. Supervisor Ramos.
Here.
Supervisor Perosa. Here. Supervisor Gregory.
Here.
Chair Gallagher.
Here. And Coach Bailey, can I ask you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
All stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We are going to have our Pet of the Week joining us. And also, we are going to have 3 proclamations today, and I'm going to announce those. A is a presentation of a proclamation recognizing June 2024 as Pride Month in Napa County. B is presentation of a proclamation recognizing June 2024 as Elder Abuse Awareness Month in Napa County. And C is presentation of a proclamation recognizing June 2024 as Gun Violence Awareness Month in Napa County. So good morning, Katie.
Good morning.
Getting lots of oohs and ahs already. And this is Katie from our shelter, and Katie is going to tell us about our guest today.
Thank you so much. Good morning. So this is Morty. He is available for adoption at the animal shelter. He came to us as a stray with his sibling. They were both found in Napa city limits. He is around 8 months old and a cattle dog mix. Extremely sweet. We still have some puppy obedience that we're going through. A little bit under socialized, so as you can see, a little bit nervous, but no aggression or anything like that. Just a very sweet dog that's slowly getting socialized with all the sounds of the world. So Morty is a handsome little guy, loves to other dogs. He's just fantastic. So if anybody's interested in Morty, we'll be waiving his adoption fee thanks to the board this week.
Well, thank you, Katie, and thank you, Morty, for visiting. I hope you find your forever home very soon. All right, great, thanks. Okay, so if you're here for the Pride Month proclamation, please come up and stand next to me. You don't get to talk yet. We're going to start with the proclamation. Come on up. I got too many microphones. Is this one working? Okay. All right. So whereas Napa County has a diverse lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community and is committed to supporting visibility, dignity, respect, and equity for all, and whereas each year hundreds of people from across the county gather to celebrate the month of June as Pride Month. Although celebration happens year-round, we dedicate June to uplifting the LGBTQ community and commemorating their triumphs, goals, and aspirations now and for years to come. And whereas Napa County denounces prejudice and unfair discrimination based on age, race, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, and is a county in which all people should feel valued, safe, welcomed, respected, and affirmed by their peers and the community. And whereas various advancements have been made with respect to equal rights for LGBTQ people throughout the nation, from the onset of the Stonewall Uprising in June 1969 to the Equality Act, which prohibits discrimination based on sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity in 2021. And whereas the County of Napa will maintain our dedication to creating a safe and nurturing environment for the often underrepresented voices in the LGBTQ community. Along with LGBTQ Connection, the county supports programs such as OASIS and the Rise for Napa Project. These programs provide resources and assistance to the LGBTQ community by creating a safe space for them to continue their journey of self-discovery and acceptance, as well as by providing training and education in understanding and acceptance for the general population. In collaboration with Live Healthy Napa County and other community partners, the county's Public Health Division has worked to increase the number and awareness of LGBTQ safe spaces through distribution of safe space kits to businesses throughout Napa County. And whereas Napa County embraces the inherent value and dignity of every individual, irrespective of their sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, we deeply acknowledge and honor the principles of equality and freedom, recognizing the profound positive impact that members of our LGBTQ community have made and continue to make in our society. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that this Board of Supervisors, County of Napa, State of California, on this 4th day of June, does hereby recognize June 2024 as LGBTQ Pride Month in Napa County. In doing so, we join LGBTQ Connection, First Five Napa County, and all advocates and allies around the world in standing with the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community as they declare their pride in who they are and in who they love. We call upon all members of the Napa County community to be an ally to LGBTQ people by treating them with respect, equity, and compassion, and celebrate the diversity and invaluable contributions they bring to our community.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, esteemed Board of Supervisors and guests. I am Coach Bailey, she, they, honored to stand before you as a county resident, homeowner, spouse, director of LGBTQ Connection Napa, and dedicated queer community member. Today I want to acknowledge that this proclamation is more than just a symbolic gesture. It is a bold statement affirming the value and dignity of our LGBTQ residents. Since 2019, this board has continued this tradition, demonstrating your commitment to inclusion and belonging. Thank you for your steadfast support. However, this year, making a Pride proclamation feels especially urgent and important. The LGBTQIA+ community continues to be under threat. Pride is under threat. The surge of anti-LGBTQ+ bills over the years and the rise of anti-LGBTQ+ rhetoric targeting our trans siblings are deeply disturbing. These actions have a devastating impact on the mental wellness of our LGBTQ+ youth and young adults, sowing fear and anxiety in our community. In rural areas like Napa County, LGBTQ+ individuals face significant challenges due to the absence of visibility, a centralized hub, and an organized Pride Month. This gap hinders the unity and inclusivity of our local LGBTQ+ community. The diverse dangers we face as an LGBTQ+ community share a common trait. They seek to undermine our love, our identity, our freedom, our safety, and our lives. Since the riots at Stonewall Inn, led by our Black, transgender, butch lesbian, and drag queen ancestors, Pride has always been about fighting back, building power, and creating safe spaces where LGBTQ+ individuals can unabashedly celebrate who they are. Despite these challenges, every day I see Napa County standing strong against homophobia and transphobia. This year, our local LGBTQ+ ally community formed a new coalition that organized Napa Pride 2024, themed Love, Light, Liberation, Amor, Luz, Liberación, with over 30 Pride events across our valley to commemorate 20 years of celebrating Pride in Napa County. Our beautifully diverse and thriving LGBTQ+ community is here to stay. And slay. As we look ahead, I'm excited to share LGBTQ Connection's plans for the future. We are onboarding new programming, new staff, and developing a new multi-use LGBTQ+ center focused on mental wellness. With new funding, new partnerships, we are bringing free clinical therapy to LGBTQ+ youth and their parents' caregivers, peer-to-peer psychoeducational support groups, and a host of fun socials for LGBTQ+ ally youth, our elders, and their families. Polls show that LGBTQ+ youth are coming out at earlier ages. That's because visibility and representation matter and create change. We want our young queer youth to see themselves represented in their community so they can envision themselves well, healthy, living openly and freely in a community that embraces its LGBTQ residents. LGBTQ Connection will continue to be a safe haven where our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning youth can find support, community, and resources to thrive. It will be a place where we honor our commitment to mental health, ensuring that everyone can feel safe and respected. Thank you to the Board of Supervisors and everyone else watching who has reaffirmed the importance of pride and your commitment to the LGBTQ+ residents of Napa County through this proclamation. Thank you to everyone who has supported the work of LGBTQ Connection and the Queer Leaders Coalition. In this moment of national crisis, the role of the ally is crucial in the fight for inclusion and equality for LGBTQ+ residents. In closing, I ask residents of Napa County to keep the spirit of pride alive. If you wish to partake in this year's festivities, please check out www.napapride.com. Thank you very much.
Great. If you're here for Elder Abuse Awareness Month, please join us. Stand around. Okay. All right, we'll read the proclamation. Whereas Napa County's older adults deserve to be treated with respect and dignity as valuable leaders, mentors, volunteers, and residents who contribute immensely to our community. And whereas elder abuse is a silent epidemic, with 1 in 10 adults over the age of 60 experiencing some form of abuse in the United States, with cases still widely underreported. And whereas elder abuse happens anywhere, in both public and private places, and fighting such abuse means bringing it out of the shadows and raising awareness so we may afford seniors the ability to age in our community with dignity, respect, and grace that they deserve. And whereas within this month, on June 15th, 2024, we further recognize World Elder Abuse Awareness Day to promote a better understanding of the impact of abuse and neglect of older adults by raising awareness. And whereas Napa County Health and Human Services Agency received 1,187 reports of elder and dependent adult abuse, neglect, and exploitation through the Adult Protective Services Program in 2023, with financial exploitation and self-neglect the most commonly reported types of abuse. And whereas Napa County and its rich array of government and community-based organizations provide a wide range of services to preventatively address risk factors, and various entities, including Napa County HHSA's APS program, the Napa County District Attorney's Office, the Napa County Sheriff's Office, work together to investigate abuse and advocate and seek justice for victims. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that this Board of Supervisors, County of Napa, State of California, on the 4th day of June, 2024, does hereby proclaim June Elder Abuse Awareness Month in Napa County. We call upon all members of our communities to work together to strengthen partnerships, develop new opportunities to improve prevention and response to elder abuse, and to report any suspected abuse or neglect to ensure that all Napa seniors are able to live and age with dignity, security, and respect.
Good morning. My name is Christy Guerrero, and I'm the Adult Protective Services Program Supervisor for Napa County. I'm proud to have worked in this program for 10 years, 3 as a social worker and the last 7 as supervisor. I supervise a group of 7 amazing social workers who respond to reports of abuse, neglect, and exploitation of older adults and adults with disabilities across our community in Napa County. I want to thank you for your support in elevating Elder Abuse Awareness Month. Elder Abuse Awareness Month is acknowledged each June, as said, with World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, also known as WEAD, held on June 15th. Today, we're here to uplift the voices of survivors and discuss the importance of an engaged community, of which are the eyes and ears to prevent future abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Like all of our programming at Health and Human Services, APS social workers rely on partnerships and collaboration from our county partners and local community organizations throughout the county to ensure the safety of the vulnerable adults who access our programs. Over the last several years, we have increased our mandated reporter trainings to support partner agencies in understanding our services, adult protective services, and in learning about what, when, and how to report. In closing, I want to provide 5 things everyone can do to prevent elder abuse. Listen to older people and caregivers to understand their challenges and provide support. Educate one another about the signs of abuse and how to get help. Report suspected abuse or neglect as soon as possible. Build a community that fosters social connections and supports. And reach out to professional services for support where available. Abuse of older adults and adults with disabilities is preventable, and everyone has a role to play. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Paul Drew, the Assistant District Attorney for Napa County. I've been a prosecutor for 26 years, and there just seems to be more and more elder abuse every year. We have an aging population. Scammers are just become more sophisticated, and social media, the internet. There's just so many ways to get the vulnerable victims. We do have a full-time elder abuse prosecutor. We also have a consumer division that focuses a lot on this. This year, we're going to try something that's never been done before in Napa, and that we don't know of it being done anywhere else. But we're going to put on something we're calling the SAFE event. It's called Seniors Against Financial Exploitation. It's on June 28th. It's at the St. Helena Performing Arts Center. And in the morning, we specifically want seniors and people that work for and care for seniors to be there. It's designed to help them protect themselves from common scams and other forms of financial abuse. So that'll be from 9 to 12. It's free. And then in the afternoon, it's from 2 to 5. We're specifically looking for all Napa County bankers and financial advisors who work with seniors. And we're inviting them, and we have Senator Bill Dodd and our District Attorney Allison Haley and some other people coming to speak specifically to this group. So we hope it's well attended and successful. I believe it will be. If you have any questions or would like more information, you can write to events@mollysangels.com. Thank you.
Is this a flyer about the event?
Yeah, you want my
I'll
copy?
just take a picture.
Oh, it has my notes
I'll
on
just
it.
take a picture. Okay, you can keep it. Thank you.
All right, and if you're here for Gun Violence Awareness Month, please join me. Yes, great. All right, hi. All right, thank you. Whereas in an average year, 44,341 people die and 96,935 are wounded by guns in the United States, according to the Centers for Disease Control, costing the country $557.2 billion each year. And whereas guns are the leading cause of death among children and teens in the United States, think about that, and an average of 4,094 children and teens die by guns every year, of which 31% of these deaths are suicides and 63% are homicides. And whereas black children and teens in the United States are 17 times more likely than their white peers to die by gun homicide. And whereas protecting public safety is a responsibility of local government, and support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from people with dangerous histories. And whereas to honor those whose lives are cut short and the countless survivors who are injured by shootings every day, a national coalition of organizations has designated the first Friday in June, which this year falls on June 7th, 2024, as the 10th annual National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And people across the U.S. will pledge to wear orange during Wear Orange Weekend, June 10 through 12, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And whereas the Board of Supervisors has taken action to reduce gun violence in Napa County by, among other initiatives, enacting policy to require safe storage of firearms in the home, implementing a firearm relinquishment program, and renews its commitment to reduce gun violence by pledging to do all it can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encouraging responsible gun ownership. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, this Board of Supervisors, County of Napa, State of California, on the 4th day of June, does hereby recognize June 2024 as Gun Violence Awareness Month in Napa County. We call upon all members of the community to remain watchful of risk factors and employ and promote safe gun ownership practices.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Liz Russell. I'm Napa County resident and a gun violence survivor. I worked at the Pathway Home program, as I think many in this room have heard me discuss before, and I was there the morning of March 9th, 2018, when a former resident of the program came into our going away party and unfortunately killed 3 of my colleagues, one of whom was a dear friend who was 6 months pregnant and then killed himself. The fact that he had been suicidal for some time, which we learned after the fact, it was distressing enough, and the fact that he decided to harm other people was unconscionable. And I've been doing this work for 5 years, and I am grateful to the Board of Supervisors for issuing this proclamation and for the increasing and ongoing work that is currently underway. I appreciate the passage of the Safe Storage Ordinance. It's the onus is on adults to keep children safe and to make sure that they cannot access firearms. If you flip through the news any day of the week, you will see, unfortunately, another 4-year-old accessed an unsecured weapon and shot and injured themselves. And too often they end up killing themselves or potentially a sibling or a cousin or a friend or what have you. And it's tragic, and it's tragedies that we can do something about. So I'm grateful for the steps that you are taking. I also stand in solidarity with our LGBTQ plus community who are disproportionately impacted by gun violence, particularly trans individuals in this country. And so I'm glad to see Pride Month recognized here, and just want to mention that particular issue. And as a survivor, this work is not easy, but it keeps me going to know that we can save lives, whether it's from suicide prevention or making sure that somebody who is thinking about harming others can be subject to a temporary order potentially to keep them from actually committing any heinous acts. So I really appreciate that you guys did this today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Shuto. I'm here today just representing myself, not the City Council. I believe so passionately in this work, and I'm so thankful that all of you are doing this proclamation and are working with all of us throughout all of our cities in Napa County to be more and be proactive. I am a mom of a tween and a teen. I love them dearly, and I am very upset and concerned, and honestly sometimes just live in this dread and fear about sending them off into the world, and myself, even as a public official, knowing that there are more guns out there and there's more violence. And I want to do everything that we can to actually be proactive about this and do more education and reach more people. I lost a cousin in high school to suicide and a classmate. I lost another cousin to suicide later in my life. There's real families with real pain behind these deaths. when I work with Moms Demand Action, so many of these amazing volunteers, and Rebecca here who's organizing Rock the Ride, which is a real and tangible thing we can do throughout our county by supporting and signing up for that and supporting the work of people that are out there every day fighting to reduce gun violence. But I just want to make sure that we are actually doing the education that's needed. Today there was a story in the Press Democrat about an American high school student where police arrested this person and they found a gun underneath the passenger seat, alleged. We'll see how it works out. That concerns me. It concerns me that there are guns out there, despite that we pass these laws, many guns out there that are not safely stored and are getting into the hands of people that could do potentially harm with them. I know that there's more that we can do, and I hope that we can together. Thank you so much for the step today.
Okay, let's go ahead and do a photo, and then just wanted to mention that Rock the Ride is on June 22nd, and please come out and join us and walk or ride or run or whatever you'd like to do. It'll be a great day. Okay, thank you all so much for participating and enjoying the proclamations. Great things. Okay, we're going to move to the consent calendar for special districts. Did any of the supervisors want to pull this? Okay, and do I have public comment on the consent calendar for special districts? All right, can I have a motion, please?
Second.
Okay, moved by Pedrosa, seconded by Gregory. All those in favor, please say aye.
Chair, no
Aye.
public comment.
Oh, yeah, didn't I do that?
There's nobody on the phone.
Oh, sorry, didn't check the phone, but thank you. Thank you. Okay, great. I think I heard all ayes. Yes? Okay, great. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to our regular consent calendar. That is 6A through U. And let's see, is there anything any of the supervisors want to bring up? Okay.
I'll move approval.
Okay, I need to get public comment real quick. So thank you, Supervisor Pedrosa. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment on any of the consent items?
I wanted to do 11A.
Okay, that is an administrative item, so we'll get to that. All right. All right, looks like the phones? Okay, great, thank you. All right, can I have a motion to accept the
So moved.
calendar? All
Second.
right. All right, moved by Gregory, seconded by Pedrosa. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right. All right. We are to public comment. All right. Anyone that wishes to make public comment on a matter that is within the jurisdiction of the board but is not on the agenda today, please come forward.
Wearing multiple hats today. So Liz Russell, Napa County resident. I'm speaking now as the vice president of the board for the Children's Museum of Napa Valley. I'm delighted to share that the Children's Museum has signed an MOU with Napa County Health and Human Services to install a new indoor play area within the benefits division at the HHS building. This is being made possible thanks to a grant from First 5 Napa and with the intent of especially serving clients with children aged 0 to 5. We also want to thank Napa County HR Director Christine Briseno for making this connection for us through her participation in this year's Leadership Napa Valley class. And we look forward to updating you on our progress and working with Holly Dawson, Lynn Perez, and many others for a future unveiling and ribbon cutting. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Liz. And public comment on the phone? Okay, great. We are going to move to Board of Supervisors reports and announcements. And Supervisor Pedrosa?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to acknowledge, the public comment we heard from Liz. I think, the group of folks that are behind the Children's Museum, they've been working so hard to try to achieve this level of success, and it's something that sometimes goes unnoticed. But as my wife is involved in that group, just full disclosure, and the meetings that they do at 8 p.m. or 7 in the morning, because it's people that are working in the community but trying to do something right for this county and the kids, I think it's just incredible. So congratulations on amazing success on that. On MTC, another group that meets at 8 p.m. and 7 in the morning sometimes as well. On 1031, some of you might have seen the news that the bill did get parked, and this was a bill that was geared towards trying to address a fiscal cliff of the transit operators in a region, resulting from the pandemic. I do want to give a special shout out to Senator Wiener. He's been a tremendous ally for transportation to make sure that we are restoring, the basic needs of folks of being able to get to and from their workplace, so forth. So public transportation is going to continue to be a huge need for our community. And the fact that this bill did get parked doesn't mean the issue goes away. It just means we have more time to address the issue. And as chair of MTC, we did convene an ad hoc group led by Commissioner Spearing from Solano County. It's going to be bringing the operators, the region together to try to come together as a region to address this issue in the next year. But again, a lot of work has gone on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor Pedrosa. Supervisor, no, I thought I saw your, click your button.
Oh, sorry, the wrong one.
Supervisor Cottrell.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. I had 3 quick items. First, I wanted to share that the CSAC Ad Hoc Home Insurance Committee had its first meeting last week, and it was a productive one. We heard from folks from staff on the Little Hoover Commission, who is also looking at this issue about the insurance crisis in the state. So good to have that off and running. Second, I wanted to follow up on something that we learned as a board recently, which was the fact that our Napa County point-in-time homelessness count had dropped. And that is a good thing for our county. And our county staff helped us learn that San Luis Obispo County has also seen a decrease. So I think there's an opportunity there. I reached out to a couple San Luis Obispo supervisors to find out if we can learn from them about how they succeeded. And those might be lessons for other counties and how we do our work going forward. So I wanted to say thanks to our housing and homelessness staff and also our communication staff for looking into that, and our CEO as well. And then finally, I wanted to share some news from our neighboring Lake County. They are the recipient of a California wildfire mitigation program pilot that's providing some money in coordination with FEMA to harden about 500 homes in Kelseyville. So they're going to do a kickoff and a demo this Thursday. So I'm hoping that I can attend, and hopefully with someone from our fire admin team too. So that's it. Thank you.
Great. Okay. All right. I have a couple of things. Last week I had the pleasure of visiting Lawrence Berkeley Labs with Supervisor-elect Manfrey and some of the members of the Climate Action Committee and some staff. It was an incredible day. We received a great overview of the climate-related work that the lab is doing, including a presentation about a process to do very early detection of vine mealybug. I'm very excited to discuss this with Commissioner Cleveland and our grower organization, so more to come on that. And then I did want to say that I'd like to adjourn today's meeting in the memory of our friend and colleague, Bob Massaro. And I'm going to say a few words about him. Bob and I and a few other housing advocates got together in early 2016 and loosely formed what later became known as the Napa Housing Coalition. Our goal was and is to promote and advocate for housing that is affordable throughout Napa County. With a public health background, Bob would become a developer and builder of safe, healthy, and energy-efficient homes long before climate change and emissions became household words. He was passionate about his work and relished the opportunity to create and collaborate as part of a team committed to improving the lives of community members. A few years ago, Bob became a member of the City of Napa Planning Commission and contributed his expertise, straightforward style, and natural leadership to the group. At the same time, Bob believed in empowering others and provided informal mentorship to many. He was one of my biggest cheerleaders, and I could always count on Bob for words of honesty, praise, and encouragement. Bob, you will be dearly missed by your community. And that's it from me. All right. We are going to go ahead and move to item 11A, administrative items, planning, building, and environmental services. This is to adopt an ordinance implementing 6-cycle housing element update rezonings and modifications to Title 18 of the Napa County Code. And can I have staff present, and then we will move on and have some public comment if needed. Good morning.
Silva Darbinian, Deputy County Counsel. I have here Trevor Hawks, Supervising Planner, and Barbara Couts, Outside Counsel. We are here for adoption of a rezoning ordinance that implements our housing element that was previously adopted by the board in December of 2023 and again in January of 2024. We are here today to adopt this in order to receive a full compliance letter from HCD. This rezoning ordinance went to the Planning Commission on May 1st of this year and was presented to you on May 21st. So here we are today for final adoption. And ordinarily this would be on consent calendar, but we've put it on admin because we have received several public comments. So staff is here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Are there any questions from the board? Supervisor Cottrell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Darbinian, and thanks staff for coming back. And I appreciate that we moved this from the consent to an admin item. I think that makes a lot of sense. So in the comments that we have heard, that what I'm hearing from focuses on Angwin and Spanish Flat. And so if you could walk us through again what these do in terms of changing requirements, changing zoning or not changing zoning, and help us understand what was in place before and what the move is to now.
Trevor Hawks, project planner for the housing element update. So the ordinance that staff has brought to you and that we're asking for adoption has implements 2 of the programs from the county's housing element. Those are programs H4D and H2G. I'll talk about them individually. H4D is technically the rezoning ordinance for the county. It requires and commits, and the county committed to, rezoning 2 of the 3 properties identified to meet our lower income RHNA requirements in the 6-cycle housing element. Those 2 properties are the Foster Road site off of Foster Road between Foster Road and Golden Gate Drive, I believe, and the Spanish Flat site. So that program commits the county to rezoning those sites. It commits the county to rezoning the sites at the acreage that was analyzed in the housing element to allow for the density of dwelling units that was discussed and analyzed in the housing element and the housing element EIR, as well as some other commitments to it that change the county code, or a requirement to require replacement housing in the event that housing is destroyed in order to develop multiple family housing development. As well as a commitment to comply with a government code section, don't ask me the number right now, that requires that the county allow developments or a developer who comes to the county and is proposing to deed restrict to lower income families 20% of the total units of a development, that we allow them by right processing. So that's H4D. The county committed to that with adoption of the housing element, and that impacts the Foster Road site and the Spanish Flat site for the 6-cycle housing element. The other program in the ordinance is H2G. And H2G is a program that implements, Chapter 8 of the housing element, staff is required to look at constraints to housing, both governmental and non-governmental constraints. And you can read Chapter 8 of the housing element. We go through an entire analysis, and we look at a lot of different things. Zoning districts, other regulations within the county code, even to a certain extent, environmental constraints to a lesser extent. But we go through a whole list of different things that are required under the government code for us to review and look at. H2G, one of the things that we analyzed and identified in Chapter 8 was the high level of affordability requirements that are at existing sites with existing affordable housing overlay zoning districts. These were sites that were identified and rezoned with the affordable housing overlay in the fourth cycle housing element. It's 2 sites in Angwin, I believe, and then there's 12 sites in total. It might be 5 in Moskowitz Corner and 5 in Spanish Flat. They have existing affordable housing overlay district zoning with them. Most of them, I think all but a site that's called Angwin Site A, require cumulatively 50% of potential future multiple family housing development would be deed restricted at levels below market rate. And then Angwin Site A requires a cumulative 65%. And so we looked at those, and part of our review of constraints on housing, we identified that those might be high. Those sites are no longer necessary for the county to meet current cycle RENA requirements. And for that reason, our analysis identified and we proposed to lower those affordability requirements by implementing program H2G. That was in the original draft of the housing element when we put it out for public review in June of 2022. And it's remained as it is through the entire HCD review cycle and here. So that's kind of, hopefully I've answered your question there with kind of a broad explanation of the 2 programs that we're trying to implement with this ordinance. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And just as a follow-up question, because as you mentioned, this came up and this has been in the public record as of June 2022. And I know folks on the Housing Committee, and I think some of the public comment that we've got was received, or the same issue has come up. So how did the Housing Committee kind of respond to or discuss this idea? And I think the idea that I want to get some feedback on is the idea that if we're reducing that affordability requirement, are we losing, have we shifted our expectations about affordable housing on that site and opened the door to other, I think one of the letters talks about a concern about more market rate housing in that area. So can you just help us understand how this issue and any concerns were discussed at the Housing Committee?
We received, I think there was maybe one public comment that during the process of updating the housing element and putting it out there for public review that asked about this element. It was discussed in a housing element advisory committee meeting. Primarily, it was questions on why we're doing this. As I mentioned, it was identified as a potential constraint. I think if you want to look at a benchmark, you could just consider what we're looking to do with program H4D and the affordability requirements that are being required here in the 6th cycle housing element, where we're and I didn't mention this on H4D. Another aspect of that is we're requiring at a minimum 15% no matter what with the new sites in the housing element. So the affordability requirements you're seeing in the 6th cycle are at 15 and 20%. So we kind of use that as a benchmark. And with H2G, we're resetting those affordability rates to the county's inclusionary ordinance. And so you can see what the new affordability requirements are through the inclusionary ordinance. We have a program in the housing element where we're going to revisit the inclusionary ordinance, and we're going to do a nexus study to see if the affordability rates within that are sufficient for the county. And so those might change, and that will potentially impact the 4th cycle sites that were attaching to that. So It was discussed that this was, identified as a constraint. I think we'd seen similar programs for SCAG jurisdictions who had gone through the 6th cycle before us, and I think that's about it.
Great, that's helpful. I think because what's important to me is that we understand the pros and the cons, and I think what you're sharing, Mr. Hawks, is that one reason to do this is that we're making those sites consistent with our county's inclusionary requirements overall. So there's consistency across the sites in the county. And also the piece that with those much higher affordability requirements, the feeling was that was part of a barrier in anything getting built there, which means no affordable housing was happening at those locations.
Part of a housing element is doing a look at prior housing elements and what worked and what didn't work. And I think that's partially what you're seeing in our constraints analysis. Those sites, they were identified for multiple family development in prior elements. They haven't developed that way, and so we're trying to find ways to still incentivize that to happen given the existing zoning for those sites.
Thank you. And then the final question is, any proposed project on that site would still go through extensive public and environmental review?
Yeah. So the 4th cycle AH sites have, it's an interesting thing in the code and what was looked at with that and how the code was written. There's two processes for them. 4th cycle, so the 2 in Angwin, the sites in Muscowite, the existing sites in Muscowite's Corner and Spanish Flat, they can come in at lower densities and they would proceed directly to building permit or they would probably need a grading permit as well. At higher densities, they are required to go through the use permit process. Those sites are also, and it's kind of the same thing we did with the new sites for the 6th cycle element. If you look in the code, we've put into the code the mitigation measures from the 4th cycle EIR. Those are, there's traffic-related mitigation measures, biological-related mitigation measures, fisheries, public utilities. A whole list of them. I think there's well over like a dozen mitigation measures for those. Those sites, whether they went through the lower density by right approval or they went through a use permit processing approval, and that's the existing processing for these sites, they would still have to comply with those mitigation measures. They'd have to comply with county codes such as the conservation regulations, county development standards. All of those would still apply to them. And so there would be a public process, we've already done an EIR for those sites prior back in 2009 when they were identified for the housing element or the housing element during that cycle.
Got it. Thank you. I think that answers all my questions. And again, I appreciate you taking the time to be here and make it a public format.
Great, thank you. Okay, do we have any public comment on this item?
Good morning, Supervisors. Kelly Anderson, Angwin. I want to thank Mr. Hawks throughout this process. He's been incredibly responsive and polite and helpful and provided documents to us. So I think he was relatively new to the county when he took on this big task, and you gave him a big job. We'd really like to have you not adopt this ordinance today and the rezoning, and I'll try to be as quick as possible. Spanish Flat site is a desert. People that lived there prior to the fires were struggling. LAFCO, in its last municipal services review, said it was unknown whether there was adequate sewer capacity for additional new development. I'm not exactly sure what the Spanish Flat Water District, how it's formed, but there's a lot of reference in the municipal services review that you would need to create a special services district, something I know Mr. Petroza has been concerned about with the other 2 services districts at the lake. There's a lot of questions if they have the financial wherewithal based on their revenues to continue to provide services. There's a letter, just so we can see how these are going. There's a letter from DeNova Homes, you saw it in the packet. So an East Bay developer is already requesting the county consider expanding the planned allowed residential uses, strongly encouraging and appreciate expanding upon zoning to allow less dense, single-family detached housing opportunities. Maybe this is something that we can't fix, but when we create these affordable housing overlay zones, then a developer comes in and proposes market rate homes. You can imagine what's going to get at Lake Berryessa at Spanish Flat are going to be vacation homes in style, not really solving the problems. The developer also has indicated that he proposes to occupy the current retail sites, and the developer said, it is immensely challenging, if not impossible, for any viable commercial uses to remain in existence. So in our Housing Element Update Committee, we specifically suggested a master plan for Spanish Flats so that if housing was built there, there would be some ability for retail or some local services to remain. It sounds to me, just like I lived in Contra Costa County 40 years ago, the big developers are coming and telling you what they're going to build. Okay, Angwin. It is not the percentage of very low and low income units that is the hindrance. That is not the constraint. It is not a government constraint. It is a infrastructure constraint. Pacific Union College runs a small wastewater and water system. It is a church. It is a college. It is not a system that you are going to expand to provide water in a special services district to all of Angwin. In the Triad project, the last time a developer came to town, the proposal was to take all the homes in Angwin and create a special services district and take us off septic systems and bring us into a special services district in order to support the development of any housing up there. Angwin's completely unsuitable. We can hardly continue to live there because of the cost of fire insurance. People can hardly continue to live there because of the escalating cost of their mortgage, of gas, of tires. It is a slap in the face to the Latinos Unidos, the Dejaro, and the Oliveras that struggled and fought and won those number of very low units of housing in Angwin. If we are to have housing in Angwin, it should be for the smallest, weakest, most needy people and not the tract mansions that are going to be built under this current plan. So I ask you to, again, revisit, tell me why we keep taking it out, the site on Monticello Road, proximate to Silverado.
Kelly, can you just start to wrap up?
Yeah. I think we need to continue to look at the Monticello Road site. It is an area of high opportunity, close to city limits, close to bus, close to everything. And lastly, Ag LU 64, and it's a general plan policy in Angwin that precludes urbanization. It's in our general plan. We crafted it. I request you start over again on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Is there anyone else in the room? And anyone on the phone? Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to the board for any discussion before we take a vote. Okay.
Somebody make a motion when ready.
Okay. Can I ask staff about this idea of a master plan? I'm hearing a lot about this idea of the commercial uses going away that are used apparently.
Yeah. So the part of the public process, the Board of Supervisors in 2021 created the Housing Element Advisory Committee. It was a 12-person committee. Ms. Anderson was a member of that committee. And in late November, I believe we had their last meeting where they did vote on recommendations they were going to make to the Planning Commission. The recommendations were the removal of the Amola site and the requirement to that the county would require a master plan before any development in Spanish Flat took place. The Housing Element Advisory Committee was an ad hoc committee. Staff's recommendation to the Planning Commission, especially on the master plan portion, was that that hadn't been in the housing element and hadn't been looked at by HCD and would require very likely a significant analysis on whether or not the master plan would be a constraint on housing potentially. I mean, our requirement in the housing element is to identify housing sites. So that was brought up. It was not followed through with the Planning Commission. They didn't make that recommendation to the board. In terms of the commercial zoning, so these are overlay sites. The Spanish Flat site in the 6th cycle, the existing zoning is commercial neighborhood. We're asking you to rezone it for the overlay. It would be a commercial neighborhood affordable housing overlay zoning district. And the other 4 or 5 sites in Spanish Flat from the 4th cycle are similar, where they have, I think there's like a marine commercial, there's another commercial neighborhood, and other base zonings. Properties don't lose the base zoning with the overlay. So you can still do commercial services, and you can do the affordable housing. You can't do them in the same area as the rezoning. The code does kind of require that within the area of the rezoning that becomes affordable housing, but we're not rezoning the entirety of the parcel in Spanish Flat. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think the entire 2 parcels, cumulatively 16 acres, I think we're only rezoning 10. So there would still be area within that parcel that is zoned commercial neighborhood, and a potential developer could do something with that zoning. Did that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
that does. Thank you. Supervisor Gregory.
Thank you. Couple questions for Mr. Hawks. So just to understand this, Site B, focusing on England for a minute, Site B goes from 50% required deed restricted to 20, and then Site A, 65 to 20. We have that right?
Partially, yes. There's in the inclusionary ordinance, it splits it up into 3 types of potential housing. So it would be 20% if what the developer is building is detached single-family residential type structures. It's 17% right now in the inclusionary ordinance for attached common interest projects, and then it's housing fees if it was a rental project.
Okay, thank you. And what are the minimum densities on sites A and B?
Ooh. I'm going to have trouble telling you what Site B is, and I probably should have. I will mention this, that it's in the graphics packet. We included a table in the graphics packet from when we brought this on May 21st. Do you have the graphics packet? The total number of units at Site A, I believe, is 119. That is the largest. That's the most units of all the 5th cycle or 4th cycle housing element sites. So B is smaller than that. I can't think of what the number for B is off the top of my head. And that's just the number of units. Density would, of course, be units by the acreage. I don't know the acreage of the sites off the top of my head.
Okay.
I don't believe there's a minimum density for the old sites that aren't rezoned in this.
Oh, here we go.
In this period.
Ms. Couch is correct. There's no density. It's just a total number of units. So Angwin Site A, I apologize. I said 190. It's 114, and then Angwin Site B is 77 units.
But those are maximum densities,
Maximum
not minimum.
densities, yes.
The minimum densities only apply to the 2 sites that are being rezoned for this cycle.
Okay, thank you. What I was getting at, if there was a minimum density, let's say 15 dwelling units per acre above, we've got sort of affordability by design, regardless of whether there's deed restricted.
Yes.
So, and last, just a comment is, these are, what we're doing is we're creating a more favorable condition for housing to get built. We heard last meeting that we need housing of all types. 80-20 projects, what these are typically called, are known to be more feasible to build. You don't need as much subsidy, you don't need tax credits. You might see many of those built in one cycle versus just a couple 100% deed restricted projects. So if what we're talking about is getting more housing for our community, it may be getting affordable units in smaller doses, but this is the right move to make all these sites a little bit more feasible for somebody to build on. So I'm ready to support it.
Great, thank you. Supervisor Pedrosa?
Thank you, Chair Gallagher. And I just echo the comments that Supervisor Gregory made. And Trevor, you mentioned something about by right that got my attention. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. I mentioned two things. There was, I think we mentioned by right with the fourth cycle sites, which is that there's two processing for the fourth cycle sites right now. There is a lower density where those projects, if they're going to use the affordable housing overlay zoning district's land uses, can come in and they can do by right processing. They would go right to, they could apply immediately for building permits. Now, that doesn't mean that they would still have to, because we wrote it into the code, they would still have to comply with the mitigation measures from the fourth cycle EIR. But they would be able to go straight to building permit. And for Angwin Site A, that is maximum density with administrative approval is 12 units per acre. And so, yeah, that's the realistic, I'm sorry. So it's 12 units per acre at the administrative approval. Angwin Site A is the same, 12. At use permit discretionary processing, that would be 25 units for both A and B. And then the other thing, so that was for that's kind of related to the questions around H2G. There's also, as we mentioned, the existing sites in the current cycle, H4D. We are required, it's part of the government code with 6 cycle sites. The HCD has required us to put this in, which is that if those sites come in and they propose to do 20% of their units at lower income affordability, deed restricted to lower incomes, they get by right processing. Similar to the fourth cycle sites, we've done an EIR for the 6th cycle as well, and those mitigation measures, as part of this ordinance, will get written into the code.
And I'll just
There's
say,
there's one other, if those projects require subdivisions, then they are subject to CEQA. So if somebody comes in with a 20% rental project, then it's exempt from CEQA. If they need a subdivision, then the subdivision is subject to CEQA.
I appreciate that. And I'll just say, both Supervisor Ramos and I, we're on regional committees that are trying to bring additional resources to housing. And the number one thing you keep hearing about is the process. How sometimes the process gets in the way of building housing. And here we are making the process more predictable, that hopefully will make building housing more affordable. And this is what we have to do when we're in a housing crisis. We have to change the way we do business. And this creates certainty. So, I really appreciate the public comment when you hear about people humanizing who is going to be occupying these units. Well, the process is what inhibits sometimes who is occupying these units. So to me, I think this is forward thinking. We should do more of that. I think we should encourage some of our local cities too, to encourage some of this by right component, because that does help build more housing and reduces the cost of building affordable housing in our communities. Thank you.
Supervisor Cottrell?
Thank you. And yeah, I appreciate the questions and comments, and I agree with what Supervisor Gregory was making the point about, that we want to be, our goal is to build housing for folks who live and work in our community, and that density itself helps it stay in non-vacation home modeling. And the fact that, as Supervisor Pedrosa pointed out, that the long process here is often the environmental review. And here we have the EIR that has already been completed as well. So that doesn't mean these sites are perfect, or that there aren't other hurdles that need to be addressed. But I am supportive of this, of moving forward on this housing element at this point.
Okay, I'm just going to mention that, I am going to always remain concerned about second homes, third homes, fourth homes. And so I think maybe a future agenda item is looking at a local preference ordinance for people that live and work in our community. I know that's something the city of Napa is looking at, but I think, dictating or predicting the affordability based on the density is great. And we also have a big second, third, fourth home problem too. So looking at ways to mitigate that also. So do I have a motion? Okay. Motion from Pedrosa, second from Gregory. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. We are going to move on to thank you so much, Trevor and Silva. Thank you. To 11B. And this is approve recommendations for tobacco master settlement agreement grant awards to support community health. And just a little logistics here. We're going to be taking this in two parts. After we hear the staff presentation, we're going to be voting on grant awards 2 through 17, and then we will go back to number 1, and this is to accommodate our colleagues who will need to recuse. So we're going to start with 2 through 17. Hello, Ms. Yasumoto.
Good morning, Chair Gallagher. Jennifer Yasumoto, Health and Human Services Agency Director. Great to be here with all of you this morning. And I have with me Casey Rockwood, Assistant Agency Director. And I also, just before we get started, want to acknowledge that we have, I think, most, if not all, of the community-based organizations who are subject to the recommendations before your board today. And I just want to acknowledge them, and there'll be a moment toward the end of our presentation where we'll ask them to come up and say any words that they would like to. So we will get started. We're hoping to keep this tight. It's a 13-slide presentation, one that we'll just call the mega slide, which I'm sure you've probably already seen. It's chock full of information. But before we get started, I just want to kind of ground us a little bit in MSA. And MSA is a little bit, I don't want to say tricky, but the presentation here strives to put MSA in the context of both our community health improvement plan, but also because of the process that we ran this year with 3 different funding sources, we are going to touch upon some other funding sources and how they really round out our carrying out our community health improvement plan, despite the fact that what's before your board are 17 recommendations for grant awards. So with that, we'll get started. Next slide, please. So just a little bit background. I think it's always helpful to make the point that your Board of Supervisors has continually set aside MSA funding where other counties just sweep it into their general fund, and it has made a world of difference. It really helps to move the needle in our safety net services, and I know I'm extremely grateful, as are all the community-based providers who are here today and those who are not here today that work collaboratively with us every day. Of course, the grant process has been delegated to Health and Human Services, and we're happy to carry that out on behalf of the county and your board. And it has been a priority increasingly more over the last couple of years, where we've really looked thoughtfully about how we leverage, braid, and maximize MSA funds by doing exactly what we're doing, looking for other funding, and we've done that over the last 2 years, looking for other funding when proposals come in to ask ourselves, is there another way we can fund this? With the goal of keeping MSA funding as available as possible for many things that are very important that simply cannot be funded by other funding sources. And also last year, as your board's aware, we ran a parallel MSA and MHSA process specifically to expand MSA funding availability and direct those services that can be funded by other dedicated funding sources to those funding sources. Next slide, please. So this year, and this is sort of I'll say a part 2 of the presentation when we were before your board on April 23rd, which actually feels like a million years ago, but it was actually only 6 weeks ago. We talked then with your board around MSA grant funding and aligning it with our community health assessment and the Napa older adult assessment. This was a unique opportunity given the timing of everything coming together, and we also wanted to think really strategically about how we can really operationalize our community health improvement plan, not simply by coming together, but by putting funding and resources in alignment with those priorities. So your board affording us this opportunity with this funding is amazing and something that I don't see in other counties or communities. And the projects, programs, and services are going to be funded not through just MSA, but also through the Mental Health Services Act and opioid settlement funds. And those in total, all of those contracts will form out our 3-year community health improvement plan. So we'll touch upon that a little bit later. Next slide, please. So bringing you back in time to 6 weeks ago, April 23rd, our community health assessment came out with those 5 priority areas: housing, access to health services, racial equity, LGBT inclusion, economic stability, and behavioral health. Next slide, please. As we also shared with you on April 23rd, we, in addition to taking our community health assessment priority areas, we looked at the Napa Older Adults Assessment, and that is an assessment that has been underway for probably around 15 months at this point. That assessment is supported and sponsored and funded by your board, as well as funds through Health and Human Services. And we've been working collaboratively with our consultants and community partners on rounding out not just the assessment, well, what's the action plan? So we, again, thought it was a great opportunity to look at what was coming out of the NOAA and look at what's coming out of our CHA. And of course, there were many similarities. And because the NOAA was a much deeper dive into issues unique to older adults, there were certain specific things that really got amplified and came out of that staff worked really hard to then frame within the context of the community health assessment. So what you'll see there is really the 5 CHA areas and then the emerging areas that came out of the NOAA. And we know this is really important because I think as we've addressed through the Elder Abuse Proclamation, as recently as this morning, the older adult population is the one segment of our population increasing, and the more that we can, as a community, look at the supports and services we're strategically putting in place, the better our outcomes. And both of those combined will formulate our CHIP objectives. Next slide, please. So this slide here may look familiar to you from April 23rd. But the point of this slide is to really point out that there are areas that we are targeting with MSA funding, and they're really the 4 priority areas from our CHA, as well as our Napa Older Adults Assessment, and that's going to be the $5 million that we've looked at for MSA grant funds. It was a little challenging to come to your board and only talk about MSA, though, simply because the 5th priority area, behavioral health, we are absolutely operationalizing in the same way, but we're leveraging MHSA and OSF funds. So this is a contextual slide really to make you understand that it's not just MSA. MSA is focused on 4 of the areas, but we do have MHSA and OSF. And as your board knows, we ran parallel RFPs for both of those in conjunction with the MSA grant award process. So we had all 3 moving forward. And again, across all of those, we'll end up with our CHIP strategies. And in addition to the $5 million in MSA grant awards, we let RFPs for $4 million in MHSA funds and another $840,000 in OSF funds. So the combined total, we're almost at $10 million that our county is singularly prioritizing to carry out our CHIP objectives. Next slide, please. Okay. There's a lot of text on this one, not intending to read it all, but it really illustrates that these are the 4 areas within our CHA that our MSA grant funding is directed at. And staff worked informed by the stakeholder process at specific objectives within each of those CHA priority areas. And I think if you count those up, I think you get to 19. So there are 19 objectives, and those were the objectives that were copied and pasted into the MSA grant award process. So applicants had to identify what area and what objective they were targeting. So I think those will all make lots of sense to you. And again, those were specifically put into our grant funding process. Next slide, please. And again, simply for context, Now, here's the non-MSA grant funding. I think there's another 9 objectives here that are specific to the behavioral health area. Again, funded not by MSA, but by MHSA and OSF funds. So there's another 9 there. So I think across the total, we have 28 CHIP objectives that we are trying to operationalize over the next 3 years. Next slide, please. So that brings us to what happened through the MSA grant award process that we've run over the last 5 weeks. We received 27 applications totaling $12.6 million in requested funding for a $5 million availability. I think this might be the most amount of funds. I know there was another year we were approaching this kind of number. The result of a very thorough and arduous process that was compacted into a very short amount of time is before your board, and it's set forth in Exhibit A of this agenda item. There are 17 proposals recommended out of 27. And the range of funding requested versus recommended ranged from 50 to 95% based on scores. Again, this would be distribution across 4 of the 5 CHA priority areas because MHSA and OSF is picking up the 5th CHA area. And what this really breaks down into is $5 million over 3 years. And that slide shows the breakdown by fiscal year and how we're getting to the $5 million. It's the 1.4 plus the 1.8 plus the 1.8 over that 3 fiscal year period. Next slide, please. All right, now we get to the mega slide. How much can you pack in on one slide? Yes, a lot. But before I turn it over to Casey, he's going to walk through. I'll just kind of orient you to the slide. So you can see in bright green are the 4 areas that we're focusing on through MSA funding. The numbers, so this provides you kind of a bird's eye view of the 17 proposals. How do they break down across operationalizing those 4 priority areas? The numbers, so for example, in the first column, you'll see 1, 10, 14, 16. That tracks to your Exhibit A attached to your agenda item, so you can sort of follow along. In total, there are 17. Highlighted also there are the recommended grant awards. At the very bottom, we thought it would be helpful to your board. So a slide ago when I said there were 12.6 million requested, you can see at the bottom of each of those columns how much was requested by category, and then comparatively how much is being recommended in each of those areas. And then kind of a side note on the right side, shaded in a different color green, is the behavioral health category, simply for context so your board can see how it frames out across our entire CHA and CHIP, even though behavioral health is being picked up and addressed separately through an entirely separate process using MHSA and OSF funds. So with that quick tour of what we'll call the mega slide, I'm going to turn it over to Casey Rockwood, and he can kind of walk us through quickly the 17 proposals.
Good morning. The other indicator you'll notice on the slides is a NOAA indicator indicating where that project or proposal aligns with specifically one of the objectives raised in the NOAA. Overall, there's $3 million of this funding that is going to projects that align with the NOAA out of the $5 million. And I'm just going to quickly kind of give a brief summary of the projects as we go through them. And there's 17 of them, so they will not be in depth, but just to give you an idea of what we're targeting with these projects. In access to health services, 3 of these projects you'll notice are aligned with the NOAA. In the Ole Health Project, Dental Access Program expands dental access for older adults. Providence Community Health Information and Assistance Program acts as a really front door to older adult services, providing referrals to older adults in need in our community, as well as access to a caregiver registry of trained caregivers. Share the Care program provides durable medical equipment and fall prevention services to older adults in the community. And finally, Napa Valley Education Foundation's Newcomers Pathway programs increases health and social services system navigation support, focusing on undocumented individuals and mixed status households. They've already established a presence in schools throughout NVUSD and are proposing to establish trauma-informed wraparound social services within high schools in Napa High, Silverado Middle School, and Snow Elementary. In the economic stability category, where we received most of the requests, both in terms of number of proposals and amount of funding, we have a program targeted at food security in Canvey, who through the food bank is targeting food insecurity and also aiming at transportation issues when it comes to accessing food for older adults through the Meals on Wheels program. Community Resources for Children application proposes the Economic Stability for Child Care Providers, which is a program that provides assistance to independent child care providers to get them licensed and starting a small business, having a multiplier effect, both providing economic stability for those child care providers while expanding child care resources throughout the county, which is another need that's identified. The Napa Farmers Market Local Food Systems Initiative proposes to backbone the Napa Food Security Coalition. That's comprised of community-based nonprofit and local government partners. And this funding will go to support their work in assessing barriers to accessing food and developing a campaign to coordinate services and connect people to resources with a focus on populations that are disproportionately experiencing food insecurity. Feeding It Forward, the food recovery program, fulfills a unique niche in recovering food and distributing it. That includes perishables that require high agility and timeliness that other organizations aren't able to provide due to the logistics there. Molly's Angels provides transportation programs that address senior mobility and addresses issues that create barriers to accessing food, healthcare, employment, and other basic needs, while also combating social isolation among older adults. The Puertas Abiertas Feeding Our Families program, also known as Fruit and Veggie Bucks, they propose to meet the CHIP objective to increase access to fresh, nutritious, and culturally and or medically appropriate food among low-income and Latine residents of Napa County by providing vouchers for food that can be used for fruits and vegetables at the Napa Farmers Market. Moving to race equity and LGBTQ inclusion. Racial equity, I just want to note, racial equity and inclusion they're foundational to health and social services, and they're integrated throughout each of the CHIP objectives. And so every application required an explanation and was scored in part on how effectively the program or service would both advance racial equity and increase inclusion and belonging. Two programs that are recommended for funding in this category are the Napa Valley Community Organizations Active in Disaster, proposing a program to address race equity and inclusion through reducing cultural barriers and language barriers in accessing information and services, particularly throughout the 3 phases of a disaster. And On the Move proposes to expand their LGBTQ school support program. And this will reduce feelings of isolation and increase feelings of belonging and inclusivity for Napa County LGBTQ youth through co-location of youth services within schools and wellness centers throughout the county, providing advocate support and leadership opportunities for youth. In the housing category, there's $1.3 million awarded to 4 projects addressing 2 CHIP objectives through case management services, including counseling and advocacy, as well as education and outreach regarding fair housing practices for both landlords and tenants. Fair Housing Napa Valley aims to increase access to stable housing and support those who are insecurely housed. Secondly, as victims of domestic violence are 4 times more likely to report housing instability, the NEWS Domestic Violence Housing First program provides domestic violence survivors with the support they need to find and maintain safe housing. On the Move's Napa Housing Stabilization Program focuses on low-income families with immediate housing insecurity to prevent homelessness from occurring through housing navigation and case management. And finally, Up Valley Family Centers will provide services to stabilize housing and prevent homelessness through comprehensive, linguistically and culturally tailored case management and outreach services delivered by trusted and experienced case managers to keep low-income, diverse community members safely housed and prevent homelessness. That is a quick run-through of all of the 17 programs that are recommended for funding that correlate then with Exhibit A of this item.
Yeah, so just to, if we were to kind of looking, as Casey went through each of these areas, there are in total 11 of the 19 CHIP objectives that are addressed through these 17 proposals. So we're making sort of significant progress already in our CHIP through your board considering approving our recommendations to award these. I want to spend just a quick second kind of talking about the behavioral health, just because, again, I think it provides the complete picture. When we look at that behavioral health category through 2 separate parallel RFP processes, there's a total of another 17 contracts that are in the works now to operationalize those, because we had 4 awards coming out through the Opioid Settlement Fund RFP process, and then 13 applications that came in related to MHSA's RFP process. All of those are which are funded. So I just think that's important to note, because in total, when we look across this, that's 34 different contracts that are going to be let using across all these funding streams, 10 million, that will kind of move the needle collectively forward. Before inviting any organizations who are here who wanted to make a comment before your board, I want to just turn quickly to next slide, please. Again, sort of more context, but this year MSA grant award sits with a prior last year award still running out, because that was also multi-year. So this slide is really highlighting that in addition to this 5 million, there's another 1.8 million in already committed MSA awards that continue into the next 2 fiscal years, 24, 25, and 25, 26. On that slide where you see an asterisk, those are grant awards that were bolstered and enhanced by this year's application as well. So when we ultimately work toward contracts, we will be melding those and then extending those terms out and enhancing them by those amounts. So it really is the 5 million plus the 1.8 that lives in prior year, but I think it's worth noting because it's a significant investment by your board and a significant number of community-based providers doing really amazing programming on behalf of our community, working collaboratively with us. So next slide, please. So this is the moment where I would like to just invite up any community-based organizations that are here who are recommended for awards, who would like to speak at all to their awards.
Chair Gallagher, just pursuant to your announcement of this item, we want to separate grant awards 2 through 17 from grant award number 1, OLE, so that all supervisors can participate in 2 through 17. So I would limit public comment to 2 through 17, and then disclosures can be made and supervisors can leave the room for the second part.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, great. Do we have any public comment, or does anyone from the beneficiaries like to come up and speak on items 2 through 17?
Thank you, Supervisors. I'm Dreen Johnson. I'm the Executive Director for Community Action in Napa Valley, CANV. We are awarded the award for the food bank and for Meals on Wheels. And I thank you so much. And we will be using this to help access more food. We've moved into a brand new building, and you're all invited. And I have invited you for the open house, but you are all busy. And I, again, say please come out and see it. We are almost double the size that we had before. Our pantry is now connected, so we have more extended hours. We are taking also reservations. We're very hoity-toity, so they can all come. And the pantry is absolutely gorgeous. If you've seen pictures or you've heard talk around town, it is absolutely the most, I think, the most beautiful food bank in the United States. I'll say that. So I invite you to come, and with this money also will help us to get more food. Our budget already for last year for food was $2.2 million. In 2019, it was $499,000. So unfortunately, the need is there. We're trying to fulfill it. We can accept more food now, which we couldn't, especially in a disaster. We had to turn away some of the FEMA food because we didn't have the room. Now we do. And I invite you all to come out and see how the MSA money will be put to work and answer any questions you have. So thank you again. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jennifer, and your staff for doing all the hard work, too. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Doreen.
Hello, I'll be quick. I'm Tiffany Walker. I'm the Information and Assistance Program Manager. And I just want to thank you guys for all your support. When we brought this program back to Napa County in 2017, our goal wasn't as high as it is now. It was about, we were receiving maybe 4 to 6 phone calls a day, and people were just finding out information like, is this a real program? Seniors, 411, like, we'll see. And then with the help of everyone in this room and all of our community partners, we've gotten our number out, and we have become a trusted resource, and they know that we work really closely together, and they just appreciate so much the investments that have went into this program. We're social workers, so we're able to go out into their homes and help bring the information. We have resource guides online now, as well as printed. That's always been like an up and down thing, but we've been able to be consistent with that, and we do research the information, but also making sure that the referrals are accurate, and then following through to make sure that they were connected to the proper services. And then we were able to expand our services up Valley. When we first started, that was kind of a struggle. We now have a social worker in Angwin, Calistoga, St. Helena, Yountville, like one day of the week in each city. And we're trying to make sure that we get expanded out to American Canyon now is what we're focusing on in our Filipino-American community members, and making sure that they're getting the same care as everyone else. But again, thank you guys so much for just supporting the program, but also allowing us and spreading the word, because it's important to get the information out and from a trusted resource. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Good morning, Board of Supervisors, county staff, everyone here. My name is Kara May Woolidge. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Executive Director of Napa Farmers Market. And today I am not here on behalf of just myself. I'm here to thank you and ask for your support from the Napa County Food Security Coalition. The Napa County Food Security Coalition active members include lots of people here: Abode, Community Action Napa Valley, COPE, Crosswalk Church, Feeding It Forward, Napa Valley, Molly's Angels, the Napa Farmers Market, Napa Valley Can Do, Napa Valley Coad, News, Providence Queen of the Valley, Salvation Army, St. Vincent de Paul, and St. Helena Community Food Pantry, and additional local government partners. So we, the Napa County Food Security Coalition, have been working together for over 25 years behind the scenes. And this is the first opportunity that we see in alignment with the Live Healthy Napa County and Napa County CHIP in order to improve our work together to improve our communications with those in need of food assistance by centering them using human-centered design and taking a a look through the racial equity lens. And we are going to build on our well-established working relationships to lift up the support that we have with the amazing food resources in our community to ensure that everyone has equitable access to food. So on behalf of the Napa County Food Security Coalition, thank you for your support.
Thanks, Karen May. And any others? Okay. Do we have any other public comment or comment on the phone? Okay, great. All right, thank you so much. And we're going to take this in 2 steps. So is there any discussion, first of all? Okay, yes, we've got some lights. So Supervisor Gregory.
Thank you. Congrats to all the recipients. This is a great day as always. And thank you to Director Yasumoto and your team. Over the 8 years I've done this, every year has gotten better in terms of making smart decisions and very targeted decisions with how we spend this money. So great job. On the business side, just curious, I know 8 years ago it was MSA revenues were about $1 million a year, 1.1 million a year. During COVID, we added COVID money and I think raised it to 2 million. So these numbers are obviously higher than that. So the question is, have our MSA revenues really gone up, or are we getting into the corpus or the account, the balance?
So there is a corpus, thankfully, and my understanding from the CEO's office is the revenues come in at about 1.4 million a year, and there had been a corpus built up. So your board wisely in COVID started drawing down some of that by adding to the 2.1, which you can tell 2.1 to 1.4 it starts to draw on that. In talking with Assistant CEO Becky Craig, we looked at kind of what a good number was, a solid number is, to strike the balance of not wiping out your corpus, but also elevating the amount each year. So that's where the 5 million came, plus the 1.8 prior commitment.
Good. And I appreciate that personally. I think that's the right decision. Early on, we protected the corpus and really just, it was, sustainable year over year. But I do agree with that approach moving forward for what it matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Cottrell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to both of you for the presentation. I love that big slide. It's really nice to see everything all at once, and but it makes sense to also to walk through so that we understand the different sets of objectives. And a question I have is, can you tell us a little bit about how you look to measure the impact here and what kind of feedback loop you might be giving back to the grantees at the end of a grant cycle to say, this is what we learned, this is what we see you accomplish, these are maybe pointers for next time.
Yes, and I can ask Casey to also supplement what I'm saying, but we actually worked, there is a feedback loop that will be built into the contracts, and it was actually part of the RFP process, because if you're applying for this, the goal was we want to move the needle on our chip. And we don't know if we're moving the needle on our chip if we don't have a reporting mechanism built right into our contracts. And so we absolutely will be doing that. There were logic models that were required as part of any submission too. So we will be having those feedback loops. I can't recall if it's quarterly reporting, but at least on an annual basis, we'll be rolling that up because we want to, on an annual basis, but also over the course of the 3 years, be able to say, what did these funds help us to operationalize in terms of carrying out our CHIP objectives? And I just can't say enough about the fact that I don't know that there's any other county that has taken their community health improvement plan and come up with this sort of alignment in funding. And that's thanks to your board setting aside this funding as well.
Well, thank you.
I could only add that this was just heavily rooted in the CHIP, and so all of the applications had that logic model, which had specific measurables for how it would achieve the CHIP objective through the strategy employed in their program. And so those are going to be built, as they've always been, into the contracts themselves, and it is a quarterly reporting cycle where we also do site visits as well to follow up and put eyes on the project and then get reports on those deliverables from the organizations.
Sounds great. Thank you for that. And it would be great for the next time when we see you here next year to have a quick snapshot looking back too on what you've learned and what all these great organizations have learned as well. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Supervisor Pedroza.
Thank you, Chair. And I echo the comments of Supervisor Cottrell. I always ask about the outcomes, and not because we question it, but just to tell the story. So I think if that's the chip, let that be the vehicle to tell the story of what we're doing and how we're investing in our community and how we're moving the needle in a real way. The one thing that came to mind, just because it happened this weekend with the vendors putting on the barrel auction or collective Napa Valley and raising $4.5 million, have we ever thought about how do you crosswalk their giving and our giving and how that makes an impact if there's any way to do that? It just came to mind as a thought out there because if we're putting out $5 million, they're putting in 4.5 in a community, that's close to $10 million into helping people. And a way to tether that together would be an interesting way to do that. So
Right. We haven't with them, but we are, I think I mentioned this on April 23rd when I was here, we are, as a healthcare coalition with Kaiser and Adventist Health and Providence, Queen of the Valley, we are meeting to talk about each of our respective chaws and chips because we all have them. And what are our chaws and chips saying and how are each of us investing in those areas so we can start looking at, you know, it's one thing to look at the county and the county's investments. It's another thing to start looking a little bit more broadly and figuring out how we look across the landscape and be even better coordinated. And just even sharing that information is a big first step, and that we're embarking upon that now.
I think that'd be a great thing, Jennifer, if we could do that, because it's not normal. It's not normal to have philanthropy like we have it here, or to have a county board of supervisors make the investments we make, not just one time, but a continuum. And then just a shout out to, you know, the Puerto Abiertas Community Resource Center, the Veggie Bucks. You know, that started as an idea back during the pandemic, during food drives. Carrie remembers that. And to see it now become a program, that's what it is. You throw a seed, it germinates and it grows, and it's really making an impact. So it's not just the big ticket items, it's things that can happen that become a great service to our community. So just a shout out to them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much, Director Yasumoto and Casey. And I love Supervisor Pedrosa's idea of casting a wider net, talking to private philanthropists about aligning with the CHIP. I think that's something actually we've thought of for a long time, but haven't made happen. But I can't wait to bring Supervisor Pedrosa to a meeting with me to talk to the vintners about that. I think we'll tag team on that one. That I think it's a great idea. And I love the way this is aligned with the CHIP. This is really the first time that we've really ever seen this. I know this has been a goal, but it's great alignment along with the opioid settlement agreement and the MHSA. And so this is really the way you do make real impact on the community, is aligning the funding. And so thank you so much for your foresight and for doing all of the really heavy lifting you have to do in order to do that kind of work. And I just wanted to assure Supervisor Cottrell that the RFP process is rigorous as a former applicant. And yeah, there's lots of evaluation and measurement built in. So I have a lot of confidence in what we're doing, and look forward to hearing more stories throughout the year about what is being accomplished in the community. So exciting. Oh, Supervisor Ramos.
Thank you. And thank you, Director Yasumoto, and to your team. I just wanted to express how much I appreciate the focus of really integrating the CHIP and the CHA, and to really focus in on areas. I think, you know, as we've done this many times, we've just had that gut feeling, and we've gone with the gut feeling and what we wanted and what we were hearing, as opposed to really having data-driven objectives. And that's what I see as being different here, is that this is truly data-driven, right? During COVID, we said we knew people needed food. Food got really, really expensive, and we just said, throw more money at food. And that felt good to do, and we knew it was the right thing to do, but not within these categories. So I took a screenshot of the visuals. You can see it right here, because I really thought, like, oh, this is exactly what we've been feeling, and now we can see it. And I think when we can put what we hear and what we feel and what we observe out in the community along data, it really helps us
continue to make these investments, because that's what I see. We've wanted to make these investments. We have risen up to those moments in time, but to actually have this data, I really appreciate, and I really appreciate these broader type categories, and just putting in planting a seed as, housing. If I put it out into the world that we will be successful on our housing bond, I'm proclaiming it and saying I think that would be an opportunity for us to better align housing within the housing division, and to start looking at how we free up these funds to really target the other three pillars if we have other sources of funding into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we didn't have anything on the phone, Ms. Hoskins, did we? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, well, I'm going to bring it back. We're going to want to take a vote on numbers 2 through 17. So approving recommendations for Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement, grant awards 2 through 17.
I'll make a motion to approve 2 through 17.
Okay. All right, motion by Ramos, second by Pedrosa. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. So now we're going to move on to, we should be celebrating. We're going to move on to item grant agreement number 1. And if there are any disclosures, please feel free. So I know it's going to be Supervisor Pedrosa.
Kick it off. Yeah, so my
Great.
wife is an employee of the Ole Health Foundation, and they are recipients, so I'm going to be recusing.
And I don't have financial interest in Ole, but in a relationship with their CEO, which creates the perception of one. So I will do the same.
All I can say is put a ring on it. Okay. Sorry, I had to do that to him. Right? I thought maybe he'd announce this time or something. Okay, so we're going to move on to number 1. Staff, can you report? Hey, come down. Just tell us about. Oh, you did. You told us about Ole. Okay. Is there anybody from Ole here that wants to speak? Okay, great. Anything on the phone about Ole? Okay. All right. Well, we can probably do this pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to support the item number 1.
Grant number 1.
Second.
Motion by Cottrell, second by Ramos. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and we can invite our colleagues back if Supervisor Gregory doesn't want to punch me in the face. Oh, yes, please. We're going to take a comfort break until 11 o'clock.
And just if I could just say, I
Yes.
just also want to really thank all of the providers who spent a lot of time in pretty short time frame putting together really thoughtful proposals, projects, and services. I know we all care deeply about serving our community and our residents and our clients and those most marginalized, and the commitment really shone through. Also, I want to give acknowledgement to staff taking 46 proposals, turning them through and into contracts that will ultimately come back to your board. We're targeting, we think now, August 6th for 34 contracts is an awful lot of work on everybody's part. I want to say also acknowledgement to our public health staff for their work on the CHA and the CHIP, but all the way through fiscal staff to our MSA team to review panels. It truly does take a village, and it's an awful lot that runs behind in the background. So I just want to say thank you to all of them.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone involved. It is a very long and arduous process, but it's a great result. So thank you, and we will break until 11.
Thank you.
We are now on item 12A. This is the Napa County Housing Authority. This is a public hearing, County Service Area Number 4 assessment. Conduct a public hearing to consider any objections or protests with respect to the proposed assessment for fiscal year 24-25 and adopt a resolution authorizing and levying assessments for fiscal year 24-25 on qualifying property owners in the amount of $14 per planted acre. And Ms. Palmer, welcome.
Good morning, Chair Gallagher, Board of Supervisors, Jennifer Palmer, Director of Housing and Homeless Services. So, as the chair mentioned, the public hearing is to adopt a resolution to authorize and levy the annual CSA4 assessment. I just want to give a quick little bit of context on CSA4. It was established in 2002. The assessment provides special funding and services to acquire, build, lease, or operate farm worker housing in the unincorporated areas of the county. It was established in 2002 with a maximum of up to $10 per planted acre. And since 2002, in 2017, that maximum threshold was raised to $15 per acre. So that means the highest we could go is $15 per acre. The proposed this year is $14. Historically, the assessment increase has sort of been adopted as a last resort, like only when there was a gap that we couldn't close in any other way. And to show how conservatively the county has proceeded on that, we have gone from $10 in 2009 to a proposed $14 per acre in 2024. So that's a raise of $4 over 15 years. We've been really careful about that. How we use the funds is they provide for the gap between the operating costs of the centers versus the revenues. The other revenue sources that fund the operation of the 3 county farm worker centers, and quickly, for those who are, I know the board is very familiar with the farm worker centers, but just for context, the county runs 3 60-bed semi-congregate farm worker centers, providing nightly lodging for up to 180 lodgers. We also provide 3 meals a day, and they pay a nightly lodging fee that is indexed to the nightly or the per acre assessment, meaning any raise in the per acre assessment on an annual basis triggers an equal raise in the nightly lodger rent. Those rents that we collect constitute about 50% of the operating funds for the centers. The state provides a small grant that is roughly equivalent to about 12% of our operating costs each year. We also receive about 5% of our total operating costs through donations. And then the remainder is the CSA4 fund. So they are around 30 to 32% of our operating costs. Separately, the county, there is an administrative cost to those centers, meaning my salary and other members on my team who actually do the work to administrate the centers, including some support from the Auditor Controller's Office and County Council. The county pays for those costs directly out of the Affordable Housing Fund. So CSA4 funds only provide funding for the operation of the centers themselves. Some of what is driving the cost of the proposed assessment this year is a $1 increase over last year's. As everyone is well aware, interest and overall economic forces are causing basic things to be more expensive, utilities and food primarily. There's also been cost of living increases for the staff who operate those centers. So we work really closely with a subcommittee of folks from the Housing Commission to take the sharpest possible pencil to our budget every year, and we operate with absolutely zero fat in there. We pursue as much in donation funding as we can, but nonetheless, as we're finding, there just needed to be another $1 increase. The only other thing I want to say about this is the CSA4, the County Service Area 4, as a model, is an incredibly unique public-private partnership between our landowners and the county to operate these centers. We are the only county in California that has an assessment like this, and it really is what allows us to provide a unique level of service and safety net housing for migrant and very low-income farm workers in the community. So I'm here to answer any questions, and the purpose of this hearing is to allow for any landowners to provide comments or register objections if they need to. So I'll stop there.
Great, thank you so much. We'll go ahead and take questions from the board before we take public comment. Supervisor Gregory.
Thank you. Great presentation. I think you've answered this question, but we're not systematically marching towards $15 an acre. Every year we look at the budget and try to figure out what we need to do, whether it holds steady or increase.
Correct, and in fact, this year we tried hard not to have the additional assessment. I mean, it seems like it's an easy thing to come here and ask for an additional dollar. That is not how we approach this at all. It's a very rigorous engagement with the subcommittee from the Housing Commission and the farm worker, the Cinco de Mayo golf tournament group is increasingly involved in the budget development for the centers as well. And in fact, they want to be at the table as part of the ad hoc subcommittee next year to see how much further in advance they might be able to commit donation funding to see if that would help prevent any further increases. So the $15 is the highest we can go based on the reauthorization, and we do not want to get there. In fact, we'd love it if there was a year that we could come back and say we wanted to lower the assessment. Some of the opportunities to do that are with capital improvement projects like installing solar at the centers. So a one-time big investment at each of the centers could dramatically reduce the utility cost, which is significant out there in the centers. So should the housing bond pass, the BAFA bond has affordable housing preservation funding that would be eligible for those kinds of infrastructure upgrades at the farm worker centers. So there are potentials, and we continue to look at other state underwriting and other grant funding sources that we might pursue. So we do hope that we don't reach $15 an acre for sure.
Okay. And then just last, more of a comment. I agree with what you said about how unique of a situation this is, how we should all be so very proud of what we've done here.
Yeah.
It's not in here, and I know we're streamlining our staff reports and making sure they're not too long, but I do believe that belongs in here. Let's every year add a few paragraphs that describes that.
Absolutely. And just to echo that, I think one of the most powerful statistics about the CSA4 reauthorization, so anyone who farms a planted acre or more in the county gets to vote on the reauthorization. We reauthorize that every 5 years. So it's been reauthorized 4 times. In the most recent vote in 2022, 89% of the voted acres voted in favor of it. So it is a really overwhelmingly popular and supported assessment in the county, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Supervisor Pedroza.
Thank you, Chair. You know, look, if we get to $15, I don't think that's an issue. You know, the fact that this is a model and with those approval rates, it shows you people see value in what we're creating. And then the need's not going to go away. And I know we flirted with wanting to do like a family farm worker center. And I think that was a good discussion to have when we had it. But when you look at the immigration patterns and what's happening at the border, you know, you're not going to see families come into the valley. It's going to be more of the migrant work, which creates more of a demand on our centers. So I think this is a great investment to have. And I think it'd be great to do a comprehensive look. You know, Jennifer, in terms of our centers, the capital needs, is there any opportunities for expansion? And I know there's some limitations on, you know, measure P or measure, you know, whatever happened, but I know there's limitations on that. But I think it'd be good to come back and provide just this overview of where the needs are at now, where the future needs might be. And also, because these centers fill up right away from what I'm told. So
yes.
What are we seeing in terms of trend lines? So I would just be very interested in that type of data.
And we will, I hope to be back later this summer to present the results of the Farm Worker Housing Needs Assessment, which is wrapping up. We've surveyed 570 individuals working in the Valley. We've done key informant interviews with employers as well as some of the farm workers themselves, and we're now at the point of compiling all of that. And some of that data is also fascinating and helps inform what is the right series of housing solutions that are going to satisfy the needs in the community. And you're absolutely right. There is this very interesting dynamic right now between the folks who, over time, Vineyards has moved a smaller crews with permanent jobs, so year-round, versus larger crews that are migrant. And H-2A is an interesting visa program that's supporting the migrant. And so there's like a bifurcation in the labor force. And of the ones who are permanent, they are 75% are married with children. They want to live here year-round. They're commuting from as far as 2 hours each way to get here. Versus the H-2A or the truly seasonal workforce that really only is here 4 or 5 months out of the year, and they're not looking for a permanent lease. So it's a very different, it's not like a single housing solution. Like farm worker housing isn't a one stop, and it's in many ways aligned with just workforce housing for the permanent labor force. And then there's this very interesting dynamic about how do we support the migrant labor, and whether that's a partnership with private sector how can we better support the H-2A visa and the administration of that program, which is a fairly complicated regulatory program to implement.
Yeah, and on the visa though, on the H-2A, they're required to provide housing for them to guarantee it up front, so they can't go get those H-2A workers until they provide the housing.
Exactly.
So, our farm worker model may not be it. So it's understanding what role do we play.
Yeah.
And really owning that space, but understanding how big that need is.
Yeah.
So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Supervisor Cottrell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. And again, what my colleagues have shared about what a unique program this is, and I appreciate how careful you are with the spending increases. I think that's important. Thank you for mentioning the potential for solar at all those sites. And yes, that would be great if we could get that funded by the housing bond. I also think a project that moves us to a renewable source of energy and then also reduces the costs of the program, that is a very good project to go shop for a lot of other kinds of grants. So whether it's, a state, the resources bond, if something happens there, that might be interesting, but also at the federal level to be able to say, this is moving us in the energy direction we want to go, and you'll reduce our operating costs. So can you give us a ballpark of what that would cost across the 3 centers?
I cannot right now. I hope to be able to come back. Any sort of scoping of that project, it's when we have begun to have these conversations. When we talked to some of the engineers in the Public Works Department, the last time we looked at that was 10 years ago, so those costs just are not relevant. But we are beginning that work now so that we can really put exact dollars to what do we need and be ready to do it.
Great, thanks for that. And I think that would be a great one for our board to be able to support you in too.
Great, thanks.
Okay, great. So the public hearing is open. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? Is there anyone on the phone? All right. Well, then I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the board. And does anyone have any comments or motion?
Are you looking for a motion today?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we
So
need
moved.
to, okay. So we are going to adopt a resolution authorizing and levying assessments for fiscal year 24-25 on qualifying properties in the amount of $14 per planted acre. So moved by Cottrell,
Second.
seconded by Gregory. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. Well,
Thank you
thank you
very
so
much.
much, Ms. Palmer. Okay, we're going to move on to item 12B. No, there is no 12B. 13A. And this is also a public hearing with our Ag Commissioner, Napa County Wine Grape Pest and Disease Control District. We will conduct a public hearing to consider any objections or protests with respect to the assessments proposed for the district for fiscal year 24-25 and adopt a resolution authorizing and levying assessments for fiscal year 24-25 on qualifying properties. So we will open the public hearing and hear from our Director Cleveland. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Gallagher and members of the board. Tracy Cleveland, Napa County Ag Commissioner, Sealer of Weights and Measures. I am here today to request to open the public hearing in order to hear any objections about the proposed assessment for fiscal year 24-25 for the Napa County Wine Grape Pest and Disease Control District. The engineer's report recommends the levying of the assessment at $12 per planted acre. The last fiscal year, the assessment was set at $10.70 per acre, so this is an increase of $1.30 per acre. As a reminder, the Wine Grape Pest and Disease Control District was reauthorized in 2022 for an additional 5-year term, which will be expiring in 2027. The Pest District was formed in 2002 with help from industry and then former Commissioner Dave Whitmer for the purpose of funding the prevention of Pierce's disease, preventing the potential spread of glassy wing sharpshooter, and was ultimately expanded in 2006 to include additional activities to control additional wine grape pests. The Pest District has an amazing board of directors. Some of the good work that the Pest District does includes funding various pest trapping programs, including vine mealybug, glassy wing sharpshooter, spotted lanternfly, and then a sentinel trapping program, which is intended for early detection of detrimental wine grape pests that are not known to exist in California. Early detection allows for immediate response and eradication efforts and further protects our wine industry. The Pest District supports various exclusion activities, including plant nursery plant inspections, biocontrol releases for vine mealybug, in addition to trapping efforts. It also supports the University of California research headed up by Dr. Cooper and her team related to wine grape pests and diseases, and it supports outreach and educational seminars for our growers and industry professionals. Assessment funds are collected and used to support these county-specific programs as well as enhance existing state-supported programs. That concludes my brief staff reports. I'm happy to hear any comments or take any questions.
Okay, before we go to public comment, does anyone have any questions? All right, I don't see any. Is there any public comment on this item? Is there anything on the phone? Okay. All right, then I'm going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the board. Anyone like to comment, make a motion?
Move to accept staff's recommendation and adopt the resolution authorizing levying and assessments.
Second. All right, thank you. Motion by Gregory, second by Cottrell. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. Thank you so much, Ms. Cleveland. Okay, we are now going to move into our closed session. We have 2 items. 14A is public employee appointment, and item B is conference with real property negotiator, real property adjacent to intersection of Devlin Road and Soskel Ferry Road. And we will move on, and then we will be back after that to adjourn. Thank you.
Chair, your life.
All right, thank you, and welcome back from our closed session. Before I ask County Council to report out on the actions we took in closed session, I'd like to make an announcement. Ron Abernathy, our public defender, has announced his retirement effective June 21st. All of us on the board would like to thank Mr. Abernathy for his service to Napa County. We wish him the very best in his well-deserved retirement. We will be taking some time at our next meeting to give him a proper send-off. In the meantime, I am really happy to report that today in closed session, the Board of Supervisors unanimously voted to appoint Chris Keeley as Napa County's next public defender effective June 22nd. The salary of the public defender is set at step 5 of the salary schedule, which will be referenced on the agenda item to appoint Ms. Keeley at our June 25th, 2024 Board of Supervisors meeting. Ms. Keeley is a lifelong resident of Napa County. She was born in St. Helena and raised in Yountville. She's an attorney with 25 years of experience in our public defender's office, where she served as a law clerk, deputy public defender, chief deputy public defender, and for the last 4 years as our assistant public defender. She holds a bachelor's degree in theoretical mathematics, wow, from Sonoma State University, and a Juris Doctorate from UC San Francisco. Please join me in congratulating Ms. Keeley on her appointment. Welcome. We are lucky to have you, and we would invite you to say a few words if you'd like.
Thank you very much. I thank the board, I thank the CEO, the CEO's office, county council. It has been an honor to work for the county for the years I've worked for the county. There is no greater pleasure than going to my job every day. I don't have to work there, I get to work there. And that is because I'm surrounded by some really dedicated, hardworking, wonderful staff. And I know that our job is hard, that we serve our community, and the Public Defender's Office serves our clients at the highest possible level. And I look forward to continuing the great legacy from Ron, and prior to Ron, Terry Davis. I'm very thankful for this opportunity, and it's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Bratton, do we have a report out from closed session?
Yes, we do. Thank you. Item 14A, you reported out on. Item 14B, conference with real property negotiator regarding property adjacent to the intersection of Devlin Road and Saskell. The board gave direction to staff. No reportable action. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, then we are going to adjourn in the memory of our friend and colleague, Bob Massaro, to the Board of Supervisors special meeting Tuesday, June 10th, 2024 at 6 p.m. Thank you. Oh, Monday, sorry. Monday. Oh, it says Tuesday, but it's Monday. And we'll be meeting on Tuesday too, but Monday, June 10th at 6 p.m.